Team Sonic Racing was easily one of my most anticipated games of the year. Nay, of this entire console generation. The original Sonic and All-Stars Racing blew me away with how close it got to the quality of Mario Kart, and its sequel, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, blew me away with how it not only compared to Mario Kart 8, but in my opinion handed Mario's ass to him in almost every way. Over 6 years have gone by now though, and now Sumo Digital is finally back with another Sonic racing game. But how does it stack up? Well, to get into that, you first need to understand that Team Sonic Racing is fundamentally different from the previous two games in a couple of key ways. Firstly, and most immediately noticeable, is the whole team mechanic itself, which makes races a little less about you individually and instead emphasizes your team's combined score. And secondly, this isn't a Sega mashup game like the previous two games were, but instead this game stays strictly in the Sonic universe. I'm not entirely sure why the decision was made to go in that direction. Maybe Sega felt like the Sonic franchise could use a little boost, which wouldn't be a bad idea. But regardless of why they decided to make a more Sonic-focused game, I personally don't mind it. Those previous games will always be there if I want to go back to them, so for now, I suppose I'm fine with embracing a more focused game with a much less word-salady title. Now, I will be the first to admit, I was concerned about how the team mechanic was going to go down. When I win a race, I don't really want my glory divided up three ways. I also didn't want to have the experience of coming in first, only to end up having my team beaten in an overall score because of events that were out of my control. And while that scenario can mostly be avoided, it still can and absolutely does happen, especially online. So far in my experience, I've seen my team dragged down by at least one place because of deadweight racers multiple times. But like I said, you can mitigate this quite a bit most of the time. Offering up items and accepting items from other teammates is easy and intuitive, and it creates a nice rhythm to races when everybody's doing it. The trick is deciding when the items are better off in your hands or in somebody else's. For instance, if you're in first place but a team member is lagging way behind, a rocket is much better for them than it probably is for you. Making these decisions quickly can help turn the tide in any race, but like I said, there's only so much that can be done if one or two of your teammates just flat out suck. Thankfully, I've never found this to be as frustrating as you might think it would be. I'm still always more excited to get to that next race than I am irritated by any crappy outcomes. Trading items back and forth doesn't just bring up your odds of winning though, it also adds to your ultimate meter, which once it's full and you use it, it'll make you impervious to attack and really fast for a short while. This is kind of an ingenious way to add a fun incentive to being as cooperative as possible. Other things like using your weapons to take out rivals also adds to it, and you can get at least a couple ultimates in every race if you play your cards right. On top of that, whichever teammate is furthest ahead creates a little slipstream for the rest of the team to use for a small slingshot boost, which is kind of like what Trailblazers did, but better. Both the trading items back and forth and Slipstream, if fully utilized, often create a strong sense of camaraderie that I never thought about for a racing game, but now that we have it, I wonder how we've gone so long without seeing it tried to this extent. The team mechanic has its drawbacks, but largely it serves as a much needed twist on the typical kart racing formula, and the fact that individual stats are still counted and displayed at the end of races means the cooperative element really only adds depth to the experience, and it takes very little away in doing so. However, if you do just want a break from it all, there are standard race modes on and offline which offer that more classic experience. There are 21 tracks in Team Sonic Racing, which is a nice number, and I like them all, but the ratio of old tracks and new tracks is about half and half, and I would have liked to have seen a larger percentage of new tracks. But all in all, I'm happy with the selection here. Some of the tracks are better than others, and some of the new ones feel maybe a little bit more empty than the older ones, but none of them felt like filler to me. They all had their own personality, their own color palettes, and some background activity, which I've come to expect from the series. They don't reinvent the wheel by any means, but they do get the job done. One element that does go above and beyond is the customization. There is a plethora of different modification options here, and it's totally unmatched by any other kart racer that I'm aware of. This makes the customization suite feel more like it's out of one of the better Need for Speed games than anything from the kart racing genre. You can not only choose different colors for each car, but you can choose different types of paint, which is pretty awesome. The customizations are broken up between visual ones and ones that actually affect your stats, so there is a near endless combination of things to try. All of those customizations, as well as little bonus box modifiers that you can equip before a race, are all purchasable in the form of randomized mod pods, which isn't my favorite type of purchasing system, but thankfully the in-game currency is so plentiful that you won't have much trouble at all being able to afford a ton of stuff at any given time, which keeps the whole system from feeling too grindy, unlike the purchasing systems in some other games that came out this year that will not be named, that are Mortal Kombat 11. Speaking of visuals, pretty much everything looks great here. You can sort of tell that some sections of some tracks are sort of meant to be whizzed by and not really closely inspected, but overall I'm really impressed with the fidelity and attention to detail in just about every area, especially considering that the game is running at 1080p on a base PS4 at 60 frames per second, and even higher resolutions than that on the PS4 Pro, although not quite 4K I don't think. It's one of those weird in-between resolutions, but the important thing is the game is sharp and smooth the vast majority of the time while looking like a current gen game, more or less. Another improvement that I didn't see coming was the soundtrack, which was great in the previous two games, but somehow Crush 40 managed to outdo their last soundtrack with memorable revisions of those old tunes and some fantastic new ones that are just as fun to race to as they are emblematic of the Sonic universe. The adventure mode is arguably the weakest part of the game. I appreciate that a story was told for the first time in the series, but I was really disappointed to see the entire thing limited to just static images of characters and speech bubbles. They are fully voiced and well delivered, I guess, but it's still kind of depressing to see the vibrant, crazy world of Sonic the Hedgehog reduced to such a bland method of storytelling. Although not quite as depressing as seeing it reduced to this thing. It's not the end of the world, but I would have much preferred some actual cutscenes that were more worthy of the franchise. That being said, the selection of different events in the story mode are overall about as fun as the modes that we got in the last game, and they can also be just as deceptively difficult. None of them really feel like a step back, but none of them really feel like a step forward either. I do feel like the overall layout and structure of the adventure mode is an improvement though, so I guess overall the adventure mode is a bit of a wash. It sort of plays it safe, it improves, and it sort of fumbles all at the same time. Thankfully, the online modes don't suffer from the same mediocrity. Between casual matchmaking, ranked matchmaking, team and standard races, there's plenty to do online, and ultimately that's the most important part of keeping this game and series alive long term. From what I've played so far, this is shaping up like one of the best online racing experiences out there right now, especially with all of the depth of the car customizations carrying over into it. And I'll definitely be coming back to it for a long time, much like I did with the previous two games.
Next one, you!
So where does Team Sonic Racing fall in the racing landscape of 2019? For me, it falls almost exactly where I wanted it to. The racing itself is still great, and it stays right in that sweet spot of being very accessible on a surface level, but still leaving more room for more serious players to flex their skills than other kart racers. While the adventure mode feels a little bit phoned in, and the track selection maybe leans a little bit too much on the past, the game mostly flourishes in the areas that matter most, including its biggest gamble, the team-based racing itself. I cannot say Team Sonic Racing is perfect, and I wouldn't even say it's particularly close to perfect, but in the end, Team Sonic Racing's lively sense of teamwork, deep customization, and its willingness to take creative risks with the formula make it the best iteration in the Sonic Racing series so far, and that's more than good enough for me.